All right, I want to say welcome to everybody. Thank you for coming to our final installation in the Energy Efficiency Peer Learning Series. This one is all about community engagement and building community support in your climate action and energy efficiency efforts. So just a couple housekeeping things before we really get started. In fact, here, I'll hop back to this one. Couple housekeeping things. I've muted everyone. So if you need to ask a question, please use the raise your hand feature or type your question in the chat. We also will have time for questions. We'll have a substantial amount of time for questions at the end of the presentation. So feel free to drop them in the chat if you're afraid that you'll forget them. And then I will go ahead and feed those questions to our panelists as we get started. I'm going to go ahead and keep moving. I understand that people have many different needs as we kind of go through all of this and what has now become our new normal as far as the pandemic and shelter in place goes. So I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that folks are going through a lot at this point in time. Also, the social revolution that we see going on outside our doors, coupled with the current political climate and the economic disruption is a lot. So I appreciate everybody who has taken the time to join us today. And I also want to make it known that Sierra Business Council has a number of resources as far as COVID goes. If you or someone that you know, the small business or constituents of yours are struggling, we do host the Sierra Small Business Development Center, which offers business consulting, marketing, e-commerce, and cash flow, et cetera. Our staff are also helping a number of small businesses navigate benefits from the CARES Act and the Paycheck Protection Program. And they're also assisting small businesses with processing economic injury disaster loans. So our particular Sierra Small Business Development Center manages and serves Modoc, Lassen, Nevada, Placer, El Dorado, Sierra, and Plumas counties. If you are not in one of those counties, please visit americasbdc.org to find your local SBDC, or we can also assist you with locating them and figuring out how to leverage those resources that are available to small businesses. I would also encourage those of you who are in Nevada County to join the Nevada County Facebook group. There is a collaborative resources for Nevada County small businesses group on there. The link is in the slide. I'll also send it out in the materials after. And then also for those of you that are nonprofit organizations, please keep in mind that statewide calnonprofits.org has been an invaluable resource for us at Sierra Business Council, especially as we approach reopening and logistically what reopening our office looks like. So highly recommend that you take advantage of those resources if they are applicable to you. If there are other things and other difficulties that you are experiencing, please let us know. Here at Sierra Camp and Sierra Business Council, we're here to serve the entire Sierra Nevada. So if there are any unique needs that you feel like you and your organization are dealing with, please don't hesitate to let us know. And if we don't have the answer, we'll find somebody who does. I would also like to take a moment just to plug our Resilience Fund for a moment. And by our, I mean Sierra Business Council is part of it. By no means are we trying to take credit for all of it. This is in partnership with a number of other organizations, including the Town of Truckee and the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation. So this fund is designed to help businesses that have been impacted by the forced closures. So we would discourage businesses who are fully operational or who have already received significant relief funds from federal programs from applying to at this time. The current maximum loan amount, it is a loan fund, is $25,000. Resilience Fund loan proceeds are to be used exclusively on overhead, payroll, and other business expenses to generate new revenue or jumpstart operations to assist in recovery or purchase personal protective equipment as required. So the program isn't intended to supplement personal expenses, or it's not intended for home-based businesses that don't have a significant overhead, or for second home rental businesses such as Airbnb. Just to clarify, the loan is designed for small businesses with fewer than 25 employees, and priority will be given to businesses with employees who have brick and mortar retail, restaurant, and storefront operations. So on the other side of the current economic crisis, the fund will serve as a permanent loan infrastructure for the small business community to help them grow, expand, and thrive, which we're very excited about. And business owners can take microloans to help pay for startup costs to finance financial improvement projects, improve their business models, increase reach, and much more. So this is not going away after the current pandemic, and we're very excited to be a part of it and to have been part of the fundraising efforts and the implementation efforts. So if you are in, there are additional frequently asked questions on the website, which at resiliencefund.org, which I highly encourage people to take a look at and take advantage of. If you have any questions about eligibility on this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I may not be able to have the answer for you, but I can definitely get you to the staff member who does. There we go. All right. So just as a quick FYI, this is the final installation of our 3-part learning series. Number 1 was resilience funding and implementation that primarily focused on microgrids and what a microgrid for a local government or for a municipal building system should look like. Installation number 2 was ESCO's 101, covered energy service companies and what kind of projects local governments can implement with the help of energy service companies. Also, we covered the advantages of going with an ESCO versus a trade pro. And then we are in our final installation, which is building community support. So this meeting, the presentations are being recorded. The Q&A session is not recorded. And all of these recordings are available on Sierra Business Council's YouTube. And in the wrap-up email, I will be sure to include the previous links from those 2 learning sessions. So just a quick overview of what our agenda is going to look like today. The introduction, we've already kind of zoomed through that. I will be doing a quick slide on possible reach codes and ordinances that encourage energy efficiency for local governments. And then we have Jenny Hatch, who is the Executive Director of the Sierra Nevada Alliance. She'll be discussing kickstarting 100% renewable committees and those energy commitments. And then we're lucky to have Justine Quealy, our planning technician with Sierra Business Council, with us today. She'll be discussing community working groups and public engagement goals. And then after all of that, we will have a Q&A session that will not be recorded, and we will be able to ask all of our panelists various questions. So just kind of a very high level on what climate action ordinances look like for local governments. Typically these can take the form of reach codes. So a reach code is a local building energy code or ordinance that reaches beyond the state minimum requirements. In our case, Title 24, Chapter 6, hooray for California, for energy use in building design and construction, which creates opportunities for local governments to be more aggressive in their either air quality goals or greenhouse gas reduction goals or renewable energy commitments. And the really nice thing about reach codes is it also establishes a little bit of a roadmap for local governments that are looking at going in the same direction. So a reach code has to be at least as stringent as the statewide code. There are some things that mandate it being actually implemented as a reach code. It has to be at least as stringent as the statewide code. It has to be cost effective. It has to be approved by the California Energy Commission and needs to be reapproved with each energy code update done by the commission, which is done every 3 years. And the key with passing new ordinances or codes, whether it's a reach code or whether it's some kind of ordinance, is, as we're going to cover in this webinar, is healthy stakeholder engagement and a healthy stakeholder engagement process and clear communication so that the process doesn't get misinterpreted. And it's important to understand that constituents understand why the proposed rule is helpful and how it's going to improve their health and wealth. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for a disastrous community meeting where you get yelled at, and obviously nobody wants that. So when you are instituting climate action within local government ordinances, typically those codes or ordinances come out of a climate action plan or out of an energy action plan, of which we have multiple examples, which we can make available. And these ordinances can include anything from requirements for water efficiency, waste disposal, green materials usage and new construction, EV charging infrastructure. Sometimes these ordinances and reach codes will be targeted at new buildings and new construction, such as requiring a certain level of PV to be installed on new buildings, whether they're commercial or residential. Sometimes those ordinances and reach codes can mandate that buildings, that new construction be solar ready, not necessarily that they have to install, that the builders have to install solar right off the bat. And so there are a lot of different mechanisms and levers that local governments can pull in order to institute these climate action ordinances inside of their building codes, inside of their transportation planning, and multiple other sectors. So for example, and I believe that this comes from Amador County, so I want to make sure that I give them credit. But I believe that a town in Amador County is instituting a dark sky ordinance, and they are requiring the installation of shaded LED bulbs as part of the dark sky ordinance. And that's aimed at decreasing both light pollution and energy usage in exterior lighting. So this is a really gorgeous example of how an ordinance is aimed at increasing enhancing the livelihood of people that live in the area. A dark sky ordinance does fantastic work as far as minimizing light pollution and keeping the area really appealing for people that want to come there for night recreation and night photography, and also enhances the environment, the natural environment for a number of species that live in the area. So like birds, for example, are much less affected by the light pollution, if that makes sense. Another example that I'd like to touch on is requiring electric vehicle charging infrastructure in new commercial developments over a certain square footage, or residential developments over a certain density. These sort of like steps can be taken to ensure that everything that is being built forward helps us prepare for a more climate resilient future, and helps us prepare for a net zero future, which we understand that we are absolutely headed toward. So it's important to remember as well that as a local government, as you begin to institute these, it's important to remember that you are not on your own as a local government, or as a nonprofit, or as a community-based organization looking to push something like this, such as a citizens initiative. You're not on your own. The California Energy Commission has draft ordinances that local governments and community members can use as a starting point, including one for rooftop solar, which is very helpful. So this is an example of why community engagement is vitally important. And my personal stance on this, which feeds into our programming and our programmatic offerings, is that community engagement cannot simply be a box that practitioners are interested in checking off. Community engagement needs to be thoughtful, it needs to be deliberate, and you need to have clear goals for what you want to get out of it, because that is going to make the community engagement even more effective. So as we go through this, I want everybody to be thinking about how community engagement in this new scary reality that we find ourselves in, where in-person workshops simply aren't feasible for the safety of for ourselves and for our communities. As we kind of move through this conversation, I want everybody to be thinking about how community engagement is really an essential part of collaborative governments, and ensuring that collaborative governance remains a fundamental tenet of democracy and of a people's democracy. So that is the large philosophical bucket that we're coming from here. And I see that Jenny Hatch has just joined us as our panelist. Jenny, I can go ahead and turn it over to you whenever you're ready.
So yeah, I'm Jenny Hatch. I'm the executive director for the Sierra Nevada Alliance, coming at you hot and sweaty after chasing a dog and searching rapidly. But I am really happy to be with you guys today. We love our partnership with Sierra Business Council, where we've been a leadership member of Sierra Camp for a long time. And I've been the executive director for the Sierra Nevada Alliance for about 4.5 years now. And we're really excited about the direction things are headed, even amidst all of the COVID and economic woes. And like Simone just was saying, this is our new logo. We have it in black and white in color, and this is like the green and white version. And Rise Designs did this for us. They're awesome if you're looking to get a logo done. So we also just redid our 5-year strategic plan recently. And I'm not just going to talk about us, but I wanted to give you a little intro of who we are before I talk about building community support. In our new 5-year strategic plan, we redid our purpose, mission, and vision. And I think one of the things that's really important to understand about who we are as an organization is that we exist to elevate and support Sierra ecosystems and communities, and that we do that through our own stewardship, our own on-the-ground conservation work, and then also by empowering and collaborating with partners, which can look like a lot of different things, from jurisdictions to small nonprofits to the Forest Service. We're really just trying to elevate and provide more capacity and more resources to conservation work in the Sierra, so that we can achieve our vision, which I won't read for you guys. You can read that yourself. And then our friendly pika. Also, we got these custom illustrations done by Rise. The pika has been a long-standing mascot of the Sierra Nevada Alliance. If you guys have been around with us for a long time, you would remember Joan Clayburgh doing the call of the pika at annual conferences, which I just love. So our geographic boundary is similar to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, except for that we are trying to encompass the whole, we encompass the whole Nevada side of the Sierra too. So we try to do a geographic boundary that is in alignment with sort of the topographic and watershed features of the Sierra Nevada. So you can see that that goes down to Reno and areas along there. So yeah, and all the way up basically to the Cascades, all the way down to Bishop and all the West Slope. Big area, 500 miles long, 50 miles wide. Love the Sierra Nevada. Our programs, and just so you can have a broader breadth of what we're doing, and I think my hope is that this will continue to grow as I'm regrowing the organization. We do have a board of governance as organizational leadership. Along with myself, we have a finance and operations team on staff. And our conservation programs are the Sierra Nevada AmeriCorps partnership, which we've had now for about 18 years, which is kind of under an umbrella of our watershed work and rivers work, although there's a lot more that I would love us to be doing besides AmeriCorps and advocacy under that umbrella. We have a climate resiliency program, which I'm going to speak to more about. We have our Sierra Corps Forestry Fellowship program, which I'll speak to. We do Sierra Nevada advocacy with partners like Sierra Business Council, the Consortium, Sierra Fund, and California Watershed Network. And then we have a community engagement program that is partially our member group program and environmental education and outreach engagement with all the lovers of the Sierra. So what I'm here to speak with you guys about primarily, besides who we are as an organization, and that is, you know, again, like someone was saying, we are a hub. We have a really great new website that is all of our member groups, which are there are over 50 of them, that and partners and sponsors have a back-end access to log in and post all of the jobs for the Sierra, all their news, advocacy, all that kind of stuff. It's a great place to really go for all things conservation for the Sierra, and it drives to everybody else. But that is in large part a success, as it's been launching since February, pretty new. It's via our community engagement and our member group program. And that program is really at the base of a lot of what we do as an organization. Every year, like right now, we're finishing up our member group renewals with the conservation community. And that is, you know, something we do from like January through June in the fiscal year. And we provide a lot of benefits through that. Regular workshops, webinars, trainings, grant, in-person type stuff, low-cost skilled staff via AmeriCorps and our fellowship program, technical assistance like writing climate action plans. That's a funny new word. So we, yeah, really there have a lot of resources that we're trying to build and continue to do for the conservation community. Let me find my mouse. There we go. And the AmeriCorps program is really the capstone of that. Slip through these really fast. When it comes to climate and sustainability and building community support, specifically in our climate resilience program, what I want to say about that we've been doing, we've had a longstanding climate program where we've done various things. Before my time, it was focused around building sustainability into general plans. which is great. And then it kind of took a pause with interim leadership at the organization and went dormant. And then when I started, we started to rethink about how we wanted to re-engage in the climate arena in the Sierra. And Climate Reality Project, Al Gore's nonprofit, actually approached us to see if we were interested in helping to try and organize grassroots community members and communities in mountain communities in the Sierra to go 100% renewable with the resolution. So what that's like generally looks like is renewable electricity by 2030 and renewable energy by 2050. And then there's some more nuances with GHG and stuff like that. So we were interested in that, and we decided, well, why don't we start with the town where our office is and the largest community in the Sierra. So we started with the South Lake Tahoe community, organized a group of citizens, and had like a lunch basically where a rep from Climate Rally Project came, and I was there, and they kind of talked to us and pitched the idea. And then they went home to Colorado, and I stayed and helped to continue to facilitate that group. And what we did was we got, we started thinking about, okay, who can we get on council that would be a champion of such resolutions? Started to have some strategic meetings with the community member committee and those folks, and then started to work on some draft resolution language, legal review, and kind of went through that process, did petitions, did a big public outreach campaign in the town. And then literally, I think we started that right around Christmas time, and then passed the resolution by right before Earth Day that same year. And huge turnout and huge public support and no naysayers in terms on council. It was a really huge success, which in part is maybe because it's a more liberal community in the Sierra, but there's definitely some conservative voices in our town as well. But we really spinned it from an economic perspective, got the chamber involved and stuff like that, and that really, really helped. After that, we thought, oh gosh, we should try and duplicate this. It'd be really cool if we could start to do this across the Sierra. So then we did the same thing in Truckee. And then how this all ties back to the member group program is one of our member group members from Nevada City actually reached out to us and saw that we were doing this and said, hey, can you help facilitate this process with us in Nevada City? So we helped that group do the same thing. So we got 3 resolutions within about a year. And again, one thing that I think is really unique about that effort was that we were going for the 100% goal, not just like 50 or 80%, really trying to hit the state standards and beyond. And whether, we do it, I hope we do, but I think it's just really a good benchmark regardless. It's really helping to like put the pedal to the metal with these communities. And bring more attention to it. And the other thing that's been really unique about it is that the committees don't die after the resolution is passed. They stay active as a technical assistance resource to the jurisdictions. The Alliance does as well. So, and we say that when we're like pitching the resolution, we're like, hey, we formed this committee to help you, and we want this committee to continue to do that through this process and development of the climate action plan. And we want to build your capacity, because that's really been one of the biggest shortfalls, is that, communities really don't have, a lot of them, like the staffing capacity to really do this work, is what we're finding. But you can see here, this is like an example of just like the ongoing positive community engagement that we've had through this effort. One of the things that's also really unique about these committees is that we have, we meet still like, once a month or every couple of weeks, depending on the committee. They're really, really active and doing a lot of great work in their towns. And a lot of them, like the woman, one of the women in this front picture here, Bonnie Turnbull, she actually got elected to the school board for Lake Tahoe Unified School District. We have another member who got hired on by Utility Energy to help with the transition. Another person who actually was on the city council and TRPA. another folk member who is on the South Tahoe Public Utility District. So that these folks are then getting placed into important decision-making sector kind of positions throughout the community to help really strengthen the effort and the voice and the partnership. So that's been really, really helpful and important. What we kind of did, before I go there, I'll go back. Oops, hold on. I'll stay on this slide. I wanted to take a pause for a second for two reasons. And that was, I was like, oh, my goal is to get this going across the Sierra. But then I got pregnant and I was like, I can't travel as much for a couple of years while I'm nursing and pregnant and so forth. And I thought, you know, maybe that's a blessing in disguise. And so what we decided to do is stay closer to home for these next 2 years and really not just desert the communities after the resolutions were passed, but then to move on with really providing solid technical assistance. So how we've done that is we've partnered and been a host site for Civic Spark, which is an AmeriCorps program focused on building jurisdictional capacity with local government commission. And we've hosted 2 fellows for the past 2 years to really do all of the inventory work and to really start to lead and champion and write the climate action plan. And in Truckee, they've been like engaged in that climate action process as like a public kind of public process and on the technical advisory committee, and in South Lake really leading the charge on all that stuff. Plus they got contracted with Stupid, the utility district, and the school district to do this type of work for them too. So working with the sectors in Truckee and South Lake Tahoe to really help build out the capacity and technical assistance. So as an organization, I wanted to really learn the whole, and as a leader, really the whole process, because honestly, it is a learning process for me. Learn as we go. I have a background in like a more holistic conservation field. But now I feel like we're really seeing the whole thing through. We're about to get our climate action plan adopted this fall. And we've really developed a really unique, awesome exchange with the jurisdiction, where I feel like we're really building a partnership with a nonprofit and the jurisdiction, building capacity for them. And just that the committee just constantly comes and in addition to our Civic Spark Fellows, like provides public comment and engagement throughout the process, so that, you know, whenever we really need to turn up the heat or apply pressure to like expedite a process, or, you know, this isn't happening the way it should, they're there. So it's been a really great, I think, example. And so now we're ready to start to, like, this year, really emulate that process across the Sierra more and be really strategic. And so we're working with Sierra Camp to kind of figure out our next steps on that. Auburn also did a resolution, and we've been working with Mammoth and Reno as well a little bit. So that's what we've been doing in terms of like kind of the jurisdictional community support. And I would be amiss if I said in our climate program we aren't also addressing the landscape level. And we are doing that through our Sierra Corps Forestry Fellowship Program, where it's similar to AmeriCorps, but they're like a fellowship, internship paid positions with us, full healthcare benefits and all that stuff. We have 6 fellows this year placed with 6 different sites all over the Sierra, really leading all sorts of projects, forest level projects, biomass, all sorts of stuff out in the field. So that's just another, and you know, they're doing outreach and stuff as part of their work too. So like I said, that's kind of a real quick and dirty little look at who we are and some of the work that we're doing and how we're building community support. I hope that provides some insight, and I wanted to just take a moment and answer any questions you guys have about our work. I'll stop and share. This is my contact info if you would like that as well.
Thank you so much, Jenny. We really appreciate it. I haven't seen any questions pop up in the chat. I took note of a couple in the chat or the Q&A. I took note of a couple that that I will probably pitch to you after after Justine's presentation. But seeing as we don't have anything in the chat or the Q&A, I'm going to go ahead and invite Justine to go ahead and share her screen so that we can get started on her presentation. And then Jenny, just want to double check that you're able to stay with us for like another 20, 30 minutes.
I'm here.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thanks.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Justine Quealy, and I am a planning technician with Sierra Business Council's Climate and Energy team. And I just want to say thank you to Jenny Hatch for giving us a really great presentation on what community support and implementation of climate action can look like. And my presentation really dives into more of answering the question of how. How does it work? What are best practices? And so on. So today I'm going to share some of my own expertise on building community support. And I just want to say that everything I know comes from my own personal and professional experience in building leadership skills. It comes from my commitment to furthering equity and equality in all aspects. It comes from engaging personally as an individual with my local government representatives and planning processes. And then, of course, last but not least, from working directly with local governments to not only develop energy action plans and climate action plans, but also to conduct community outreach and engagement through that whole process and all the way through to implementation. So to start with, I definitely want to make sure that, sometimes when we talk about, big concepts, it can be a little bit unclear about exactly what that means and how that applies to either yourself as a professional in local government or yourself as a community member. So overall, community engagement is the concept of including those who are affected by a decision in the decision-making process, and including the public participation process so that everyone is at the table, and those decisions can actually affect the provision of services. They can affect future visioning and strategic planning and the overall long-term sustainability of communities. And community engagement can show up in a variety of ways, including consulting, overall participation, collaborative efforts, and empowerment. And I just want to make sure that everyone, if you take anything away today, that you know that community engagement and outreach is not meant to be easy. It's not at all easy, it's not simple, and it requires your ongoing and intentional effort in assessing how it's going, continually improving your methods and approaches. And it's really important to put that work in from the start so that you're setting yourself up in the best way possible, both as a local government and as a community member, and ensuring that the process is as accessible, as approachable, as achievable as possible for the community and the local government. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of best practices resources that I have come to rely on in my years of conducting community engagement. And so the first one is the IAP2 framework, and the second one is the GEOS Institute Climate Ready Communities. Of course, the list for community engagement resources is long, and there's lots out there, and you might find something that works better for your individual needs or your community needs. But these are the two that I have found to be most helpful. So let's start with going over the International Association for Public Participation Framework, and that's what IAP2 stands for. And you can find a lot of excellent resources from them on their website, and they provide an excellent standard for community engagement best practices. And there's different ways that you can engage directly with them and different products that you are available for free or for purchase. And you can explore more on their website. But here I wanted to highlight what they call the spectrum of public participation. And this shows the different stages of public participation and how that impact on the decision-making process leads to varying results. And you can see that it starts with sharing information, keeping the community informed and on what the next decision-making process is. And then that starts to open up the process of consulting and collecting feedback and input from community members. And then that naturally leads into a more involved process where you are taking that feedback and informing the actual planning process. And of course, that means that you are collaborating directly with your community members, with the local government officials, and that's really a two-way process, which results in an empowered community and empowered decision. And so this is just a snapshot of some of those resources you can find, but it's really important to understand what community engagement can look like, what those best practices are, and then follow them. The second one I want to highlight is the Climate Ready Communities Guide. And so Climate Ready Communities is an initiative by the GEOS Institute, and the GEOS Institute provides whole community resilience resources. One way is through this guide, but they also have support packages, they have other services, and the guide is free. You just have to join their membership program and you get access to the guide right away. And the guide is called A Practical Guide to Building Climate Resilience. And it includes a number of sections that cover best practices for community engagement and public participation in the local government decision-making process. And I have found this to be immensely helpful as I have worked at SBC and worked with community members and engaged with local governments. So I highly recommend this guide. It's long, but throughout the whole guide, community engagement is covered because, as you can see from this 7 steps of whole community planning, at every single stage, 1 through 7, community engagement is an important and integral piece. So it's emphasized at every stage. Every stage includes best practices and guidance for how to involve the community at the particular level. And the end result, of course, is that by inviting people into the process from step 1 and consulting with them throughout and incorporating their feedback, local government efforts will be much stronger and will generate more support for implementation. In my experience, climate action is most successful and turns into implementation when the community and the local government are working together. So it really needs both to come together. And this should take place from the beginning, from the planning process, and go all the way through to implementation. And both the community and the local government should engage with each other at every stage, at every different level. And having an active, engaged community ensures that any climate planning efforts that are put forth by the local government and by decision makers are relevant, applicable, and achievable. And here in the Sierra Nevada, and specifically with our climate and energy team at SBC, we have developed several energy action plans, which are roadmaps for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the community. And they are being successfully and actively implemented thanks to that high level of community engagement from stage 1 all the way through to years later of implementation and achieving more and more climate action. So I wanted to call out a couple that I wanted to highlight today because it demonstrates how involving the community at the early stages of planning all the way through implementation yields really great results. So first of all, shout out to Jenny Hatch because Nevada City has a 100% renewables resolution thanks to her work and Sierra Nevada Alliance's work directly with that local government and also the community sector. So Nevada City has their energy action plan and they were in the process of implementing it, and having direct engagement with community members and local government officials meant that they were able to take that to the next level and pass their 100% renewables resolution and reduce even more greenhouse gases and make their community even more resilient. The city of Sonora also has an energy action plan that they are implementing, and they put on a successful Title 24 training. And you'll remember that Simone highlighted Title 24 and is basically building codes and standards that increase energy efficiency in the built environment. And typically, those trainings are more geared toward the local government building sector. And really, Title 24 impacts every single person who has any anything to do with the built environment. So architects, designers, contractors, inspectors, the full gamut. And I wanted to highlight this particular Title 24 training because it was a great example of including the participants from all those sectors in the training and covering the entire community and local government needs in one big training. So that was a great full day of going over how Title 24 impacts the city of Sonora and how they can make the best of using those standards to increase their community's resiliency. Grass Valley, the city of Grass Valley, is another example of including strong public engagement from the very beginning of their planning stages for their energy action plan. And when they were not engaging with as many community members as they wanted to, they reevaluated what their process was and looked into other ways of reaching more people. And as soon as they kind of pivoted, they were very successful in engaging more people, which meant that their energy action plan was more representative of that community. And the result of that is that their first year of implementation was highly engaged, highly successful. And I just want to shout out the energy efficiency workshop series that that group put on, because I think that's a great example of the local government and the community members coming together to create an education program that was very beneficial for all those residents. And last but not least, Nevada County has their energy action plan that they're currently implementing. And earlier this year, the Board of Supervisors made the implementation of that energy action plan one of their board priorities for 2020. And if anyone is familiar with local government processes, this is huge. This is a really big deal. And it means that there's more local government support, there's more capacity, money, energy that can be dedicated to the implementation of their energy action plan. And as we all know, rural local governments are always at capacity and always looking for more ways to increase their capacity, and this is one way to do it. So I'm very proud of Nevada County for making it a board priority. So public engagement overall is truly a partnership. It's a partnership mainly between the community and the decision makers. But the question to ask is, how is that partnership formed and how is it fostered and supported throughout the life of decision-making processes? And this looks like leadership. And leadership comes in many different forms. And so it's important to identify who and what is leadership. What does that look like in your community? So are those local government officials, elected officials, various public agencies? Are there champions in your community? Are there existing community groups and organizations? And once you identify where that leadership is, that's when you can start to really form and foster those key partnerships that support public engagement, that support implementation of, for example, energy action plans. The other question that's important to ask is, who is included in this process of forming partnerships? And variety is the name of the game. It strengthens the goals, the actions, the potential of that planning process and climate resiliency process. And it's important to ask, are all sectors represented? Does this represent the entire community? And one way that key partnerships have shown up in Nevada County that I want to highlight is the partnership between Kate Gordon, who is the director of the California's Office of Planning and Research, and the community and local government in Nevada County, Nevada City, and Grass Valley. And there was a climate action forum that was community-wide, and we needed a keynote speaker. And so we asked a number of people, including Kate Gordon, to be that keynote speaker. And the reason that Kate Gordon recognized us and said, yes, I will come be the keynote at this important, huge climate action forum is because she recognized the partnerships, the existing key partnerships that existed between community members, community leaders, local government officials, and that effort was bolstered by the fact that those partnerships already existed and then leveled up to having a state representative, and of course that can level up all the way to federal government. And it's important to have communicative, productive relationships with local governments and community leaders, because it can end up in results like that. And so I just wanted to highlight that as a success. So the final thing that I want to touch on that leads to building community support is that the public engagement process must be equitable and it must be accessible. To create equitable points of access to local government decision-making processes, we have to reduce as many barriers to engagement as possible. And this is going to look different in every single community. Every single community is different, and therefore how their community engagement manifests is going to also look different. And there is also more than one right way to do it. I'll say that again because that is really important to remember. There is more than one right way to do community engagement. And as long as you are asking the right questions, evaluating, assessing if your community engagement is truly equitable and accessible, you're doing it right. And so it's important to take that and evaluate and assess and keep asking questions, keep improving the process, and ensuring that your community engagement is consistently striving to be as equitable and accessible as possible. The best piece of advice I can give to both local government officials and community members is to keep interrogating whether the effort is enough. Is it serving enough people? Is there more that we can do? And the second best piece of advice I can give is to never let perfection get in the way. So you're always going to try, and you're going to recognize, if you're questioning it, you're going to recognize areas that can be improved upon, and you're going to try again. And so keep interrogating whether it's good enough, keep trying again, because equitable and accessible public engagement is ongoing, it's intentional, and it's an active effort. And it certainly is not just a box to check. It's also a two-way communication. So if you are a decision maker, if you are a government official, the question to ask is, are you fostering equity and accessibility in your outreach and engagement? It's important to be asking that so that you can create a framework that includes anyone and everyone. For the flip side, for community members, it's important to ask yourself, are you communicating with your local decision makers and expressing your needs? Are you holding them accountable? Are you advocating? And I just want to provide a couple of examples, because this can look different and there are many and varied examples I could use, but these are the ones I personally have encountered during my experience of conducting community engagement. So the first one is language. So very often English is the first language in the communities I work in, but are we including other first languages that are also spoken in the community for those where English is a second language? When you're thinking about physical accessibility, can differently abled people access your community engagement process? For example, if it's a physical location where you're having a meeting, is it wheelchair accessible? Do you have someone who can sign, an American Sign Language interpreter? If it's a video, are you providing closed captioning? And even for a website or a web portal that's being created to conduct surveys, for example, for community engagement and gathering input, is the web design accessible for neurodivergent or visually impaired people? There's also cultural considerations to make and to consider whether, for example, the meeting space is a safe place that for the entire community, if it's approachable. And this also ties into choosing a time and location. So consider if the time is when most people can access it, if it's a centralized location, and if you are accommodating all of the potential needs of your various community sectors. So for instance, if it's in the evening around dinner time, is there a way to provide food or refreshments? If you are expecting or wanting families to be able to attend, is there a way to provide childcare? So it's always about removing as many barriers as possible to increase accessibility. And the last one I want to highlight is just, can anyone in your community find a point of information access? And what I mean by that is community engagement usually starts with that first stage, right? Informing, providing information. So if it's an online process, are you also providing an in-person process so that if someone prefers one or the other, they can get to the same information but through different access points? Perhaps your community cannot rely on high-speed internet, and so the online version isn't accessible. So maybe there's a way to broadcast on the radio or television. So as long as you're using a multi-pronged approach, that's the best way to ensure that you have multiple forms of information access for your community members to engage. And overall, I just want to say that the more of a community that can engage, that will engage, the stronger the process and the product will be. And I know that everyone has the same goal of achieving a higher level of community resilience, especially in the face of climate impacts. And so creating equitable and accessible community engagement ensures that everyone who is impacted by climate change is part of the decision-making process and part of that community resilience.